scared to say it, but Obama left this country with cracks we're still falling through. His legacy wasn't unity. He lit a fuse, and now we're watching it burn.
Victor Davis Hanson warns that nobody dares say this about Barack Obama, except him, pointing to the influence and quiet power Obama still holds behind the scenes.
I'd like to talk about the ongoing melodrama of what Barack Obama knew or did not know in his involvement with Russian collusion, the hoax that plagued the Donald Trump 2016 campaign, tried to undermine his transition in 2016 and 17, and ate up the first 22 months of his presidency in 2017 and 18, and was found to be completely bogus. There are three blind mice involved in this tale. John Brennan, the former CIA director, James Clapper, the former director of national intelligence, and James Comey, the former FBI director. And they all have new manifestations of their untruthfulness.
Critics are now circulating claims, unproven and hotly disputed, that Barack Obama may have urged intelligence officials to push narratives fueling the Trump-Russia drama.
Let's start with John Brennan. He's very angry right now because the trove that was released by Tulsi Gabbard of new documents and investigations may or may not have referrals come out of them, and Pam Bondi may file new charges. The problem that Brennan has is that he went to a meeting and he presented a false picture of CIA assessments. The so-called CIA heads of various divisions found no Russian collusion. They said to John Brennan, there's nothing there that we can see that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. He rejected that, cherry-picked 4 or 5 other analysts, and then presented a false picture to Barack Obama. Or did he? Or did Barack Obama request that he do that? It'll be he said, but it's more likely that Barack Obama asked John Brennan to come up with the correct CIA assessments, sort of like Mr. Barrack, the head of Soviet secret police during the Cold War at the end of World War II. He said, I have the, you find me the, so I have the Donald Trump, all I need is Russian collusion. And that was the methodology that they proceeded by.
Victor talks about John Brennan in stark terms, saying critics view him as acting like a loyal operative for Obama, carrying out the former president's agenda long after leaving office.
The problem with Brennan, though, is he, in the process of preparing this false assessment, he said again and again, both publicly but also under testimony, he didn't know anything about the Steele dossier. Didn't know anything about it. He didn't read it. It didn't compute into CIA assessment. That was a lie. That was a lie. We know now from other testimonies, especially from the Trove, that he did draw on the fake Steele dossier. He referenced it to other people. And the problem with John Brennan is this isn't the first time he's misled us. He lied about the Senate staff computers. That was under oath. He lied, remember, about Predator drones when he said there was no collateral damage. And remember, he lied also as one of the 51 intelligence authorities who tried to float that bogus idea that Hunter's laptop was cooked up in Russia. Then we come to James Clapper. He was sitting at this meeting in December of 2016 where he gave a false assessment and he misrepresented what the 18 intelligence agencies under his direction had found. They had not found Russian collusion, and yet he participated in this. He went so far as later to thanking and giving credit for Barack Obama for demanding that they find Russian collusion. He said if he hadn't have ordered us to do this, we wouldn't have found it, i.e. the subtext is there was no evidence in our intelligence agency for it, so we concocted it on the directive of Barack Obama. But remember, he lied too. He swore under oath to the U.S. Congress that the National Security Agency had never spied on Americans. That was an abject lie, and he was part of the 51 intelligence authorities who also lied to the American people in 2020 on the eve of the second debate when Joe Biden denied that Hunter Biden's laptop was authentic. He quoted the 51 authorities. The FBI, remember, at that time had it in his possession and had already authenticated it as genuine.
Then we come to James Comey, who insists he had nothing to do with the Steele dossier, a denial critics say only deepens the suspicion surrounding his role.
Then we come to James Comey. He also says that he had really nothing to do with the Steele dossier. The fact is, he was completely acquainted with it. His FBI offered $1 million. They were so desperate to validate it. They said to Christopher Steele, just give us some proof. We can use this. We'll give you $1 million. He couldn't even come up with He couldn't even come up with the substantive arguments to corroborate his own dossier, so he didn't get the $1 million. More importantly, James Comey has a problem. He leaked on an FBI device a conversation he had memorialized to the New York Times via a third party. James Comey, remember, went before the House Oversight Committee, as I said earlier, and lied 245 times. If you say, I don't remember, I don't recall, I don't know. Can you imagine an FBI director with all that knowledge at his fingertips saying, I don't remember, I don't know about the most important investigation in recent history? Let's sum up these three blind mice. There's new evidence that Barack Obama asked intelligence and investigatory heads like John Brennan, like James Clapper, and James Comey to find me evidence that you haven't found yet so that we can continue the Russian collusion hoax after it was ineffective in the campaign. Hillary lost the election. Now we want to sabotage. This is the subtext of the transition and his presidency. You go back, we only have a few weeks left. I'm a lame duck president, and bring me the right assessments.
Russian intelligence were reportedly concerned that they were being accused of colluding with Donald Trump by the Hillary Clinton campaign, a twist that left them stunned at how fast the narrative was spiraling.
The Dutch intelligence had tapped into Russian intelligence unknowingly to the Russians, and they were concerned that they were being accused of colluding with Donald Trump by the Hillary Clinton campaign. And yet they had intelligence that Hillary Clinton had actually hired, and we know now that that was true, through the paywalls of the DNC, the Perkins Coie law firm, the Fusion GPS political operation, to give money to Christopher Steele for this so-called Steele dossier that was proven to be fraudulent and the source of this entire hoax. So here's the point. That had been completely proven false, both by the Mueller investigation, saw that no credible, but the intelligence agencies, one of these 18 or all of them or some of them, knew from information from the Dutch that there was no validity. But here's the second thing. Apparently, John Brennan and James Clapper, may or not James Comey, the head of the FBI, also knew from their own intelligence teams when they were trying to act on this information and prepare it for digestion by Barack Obama, the lame duck president who was on his way out. They said, wow, they may have wanted to tamper in or troll or get on the websites like the Chinese have done, but there was no evidence, according to our subordinates, our intelligence chiefs of these subdivisions, and Tulsi Gabbard, remember, oversees some of these well beyond the FBI or the CIA. There's no evidence that our team can find any evidence. Now, what's Tulsi Gabbard upset about? That was known to John Brennan. That was known to James Clapper. That was probably known to the FBI. But they have notes. They have information that when they prepared this daily, weekly digest of intelligence updates to lame duck Barack Obama in 2016 and into 2017, he ignored it. He did not want to hear that. He wanted more information pertaining to Donald Trump and the Russians colluding. It was almost like, you find me and I'll give you the... And so what did Brennan and Clapper allegedly do? They reversed the opinion of their own intelligence subordinates, and they crafted or fabricated after the election. Remember that, after the November 2016 election, and then, according to the wishes of Barack Obama, they created an intelligence falsehood, a false narrative, a fake narrative that Donald Trump, now the president-elect, soon to elect office, had been colluding with the Russians. And we know what happened after that.
America's walking straight into a storm, and everyone's acting like it's a light breeze. This is how nations fall. We've seen this before in history. Decay from the inside, leaders asleep at the wheel, people pretending everything's fine.
Victor Davis Hanson warns that something serious is about to hit America. A breaking point, he says, has been building for years beneath the calm surface.
Have you heard this word lately that's been bandied about? Oligarchs, autocrats, dictators, but mostly aristocrats. In other words, that supposedly a small cabal of very wealthy people have snatched control of the government. And the Democrats, as the loyal opposition of the fighting middle class, is trying to stop it. They use the word plutocrats. Oligarch, just from the Greek word, the rule by the few. Plutocrat means the rule by the wealthy. Aristocrat means rule by the so-called best, or those people who claim they're better born. But they're using all of these terms to castigate, apparently, the relationship between Elon Musk and Donald Trump. But here's what's ironic. We didn't hear any of this during the Obama years, during the Clinton years, or during the Biden years.
Victor asserts that for 20 years, no one mentioned that the country was controlled by oligarchs. Power concentrated so quietly, most people never saw it happening.
In other words, for 20 years, no one mentioned that the country was controlled by oligarchs. Let me just look at the list for you of the 10 wealthiest people in the United States. Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Warren Buffett, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, Mike Bloomberg. They all have one thing in common. They're all worth over $100 billion. And until recently, I would say the 2024 election, they were all against the Republican Party and were lavish donors for the Democrats.
Victor noticed how terms like oligarchs, autocrats, plutocrats, and aristocrats are suddenly being thrown around in political discourse.
Why they're angry now is because Jeff Bezos' Washington Post, which was a vehicle, a money-losing but still influential vehicle for leftist and democratic agendas, decided not to endorse either Kamala Harris nor Donald Trump. Elon Musk, who voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 when he was beloved by the left because of Tesla, because of SpaceX, because of Neuralink, because of Starlink, also, according to what he said, voted for Joe Biden in 2020. Mark Zuckerberg, remember, put $419 million in his various PACs to absorb the work of registrars to great effect in the 2020 election. Mike Bloomberg probably has the single record. He used $1 billion to try to capture the 2020 Democratic primary nomination. $1 billion. So why are they so angry at the oligarchs when the oligarchs were synonymous with Democrats? And I should point out that George Soros put in $125 million in the 2022 midterms. He has the all-time record. It's assumed that he has spent $22 billion for left-wing candidates and left-wing PACs and left-wing foundations. Sam Bankman-Fried, the felon, he put over $100 million in the from 2020 to 2022, all on the side of Democrats and left-wing candidates. His mother was a bundler, a stealthy bundler for billionaires in Silicon Valley.
Victor questioned why it suddenly becomes a concern only when multi-billionaires start questioning the Democratic Party, as if their power was acceptable until it challenged the narrative.
In the one last data point, in the 2024 election cycle, the Biden campaign, the Harris campaign, and the Trump campaign together raised $4.7 billion. But guess what? The Democrats raised $1 billion more than did Trump. So what is going on? There is an anger now that for the first time in 20 years, over 3 administrations, Clinton, Obama, and Biden, for the first time, there are multi-billionaires who are starting to question their Democratic loyalty. Larry Ellison, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, perhaps even Jeff Bezos. Most billionaires are still on the side of the left, but they don't tolerate any apostates. So they're angry they don't have a lock on the oligarchs, so to speak. I'll just finish with one reflection. Why did they start to bolt? Because the Democratic Party was so sure of the support of billionaires, they started making demands upon them and saying, you're going to give this amount of money. And if you want to play ball with us, this is the monopoly that will control artificial intelligence. You are included, you're not. We're going to get the FBI to partner with you, Mark Zuckerberg, and Meta, Facebook, to make sure you ban information injurious to the Biden campaign. You, Twitter, the old Twitter, you're going to have FBI. And they revolted. And Donald Trump came along and said, I welcome all of you because I'm not going to tell you who to vote for or what to do, but I'm going to look at you in a nationalist, populist manner. You are the William Knutsons, the Henry Fords, the Henry Kaisers of the production board. In other words, I'm going to go to bat for you so that you do not have your wealth confiscated in China, so that people in Europe do not impose special taxes on you just because you're making too much money or try to censor your news. In other words, I'm going to try to enlist you on the behalf of the country in a patriotic nationalist fashion. And they found that argument more persuasive than they did, you better give to us, and this is what you're going to do. And as a result, 30% of the billionaires bolted and are either now neutral or they favor the Republicans.
The Democratic Party is the party of the very wealthy, the plutocracy, and the billionaire class. Yet they still demand absolute loyalty and unwavering solidarity.
The vast majority, to repeat, still favor Democrats. The Democratic Party is the party of the very wealthy, plutocracy, and the billionaire class. But they demand absolute loyalty and solidarity, and any defections or apostates then cause them to go, I don't know what the word is, ballistic, that anybody would doubt their ability to control the big money in the United States. Big money in the United States is a democratic phenomenon. We're going to have more billions of dollars, which begs this question. They don't have the resources as they look toward the 2028 Olympics, they being Los Angeles, to fix this problem. So Donald Trump does, but Donald Trump says, I will fix it and I will put a czar there if you change your timber and forest management and hillside management. If you release more water from the Sacramento tributaries and keep that aqueduct and all the reservoirs full, and if you reform your insurance industry so you don't cap what the insurance companies can charge so that they don't go broke. And if you look very carefully at how you hire people in water, power, and fire management, that's a lot of ifs, because Donald Trump is against another impediment. A lot of people look at this devastation, and I'm not kidding, and they think, wow, this is a way to build a new Los Angeles. High rises, light speed, light rail, density, low-income housing. We'll take Pacific Palisades, we'll take Pasadena, we'll make it into sort of a European village. And some of you have been to Italy or France, and outside of the major cities, you can see what we're talking about. Large high-rises, condos, green areas, but the point is, all controlled and subjugated by the same people who gave us the fire.
Ask Governor Newsom why this state is a dysfunctional and unsustainable project.
A Wednesday night, there's been 15,000 acres, 1,000 structures destroyed. Nobody knows how many people are missing.
Victor Davis Hanson warns that this is the end of Gavin Newsom in California, as the chaos, crime, and collapse under his leadership can no longer be ignored.
I'm here in California. I've been a lifelong resident of the States, 5th generation to live in the same house. I had a house in the Sierra, and it would almost burn down 3 years ago during the Aspen fire. And I'm speaking on the evening when you've all heard about the disastrous fire in Los Angeles. As I'm speaking on a Wednesday night, there's been 15,000 acres, 1,000 structures destroyed. Nobody knows how many people are missing.
Victor Davis Hanson exposes what no one dares say about Gavin Newsom. California's collapse is the result of failed leadership and reckless policies.
And how do we characterize this? Everybody's talking about the Santa Ana winds, climate change. I mean, everybody, the people in power. But it was preventable. And once it started, this fire, it could have been assuaged. You could have had it lessened, that the severity didn't have to be as catastrophic. So I would characterize it as a DEI, Green New Deal, hydrogen, something out of Dante's Inferno. And what I mean by that is it's a systems breakdown, a civilizational collapse. When you look at the people in charge, Gavin Newsom flew in to sort of do these performance art stunts, but he has systematically ensured that water out of the Sacramento River and the watershed of Northern California would go out to the sea rather than into the aqueduct.
Victor was disappointed with what happened in California under Gavin Newsom, blaming his leadership for the state's decline and mounting crises.
Gavin Newsom, as I had mentioned earlier, has had a series of podcast interviews, and he's selected conservatives. Charlie Hurt, Michael Savage, and others have been meeting with him. Steve Bannon was the most recent. And they're asking him a series of questions. But none of them seem to really get to the heart of the matter. And that is to ask Governor Newsom why this state is a dysfunctional and unsustainable project. I'm not talking just about the $100 to $200 billion high-speed rail debacle. I'm not even talking about Governor Newsom's up of 4 dams on the Klamath River. Took about $250 billion that he took out of a bond measures fund to do what? To build reservoirs. I'm not even talking about his cancellation or delaying of 3 reservoirs in Los Banos Grandes, the Sites Reservoir, and Temperance Flat, which would have given us in a year like this, where we have ample rainfall and snowmelt, about 5 million acre feet of storage. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about the more dire catastrophes. Right now, the state started the year 2024, $76 billion in debt. We have the highest income tax rate at 13.3. We have the highest gas taxes at nearly 70 cents a gallon. We have among the highest sales taxes, property taxes.
California ranks either dead last or among the 5 worst states when it comes to the condition of its freeways and roads, a decay that mirrors the broader decline of the state.
Right now, Governor Newsom, half of all births in California are covered by Medi-Cal. We have spent almost $11 billion on indigent aid, mostly for people who are here illegally. You are now broke. Even that was not enough. You are asking to borrow $3.4 billion from the general fund, which was in arrears, to pay for the health care of people who were largely allowed to come into California illegally. More importantly, in addition to that, almost 20% of all the people who are PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric users, have not paid their bills. It's a fantastic multi-billion-dollar shortfall. What is your plan to address that? If it's to raise rates, we already pay 70 to 80% higher electric bills than any other state, and on general, higher than the average American. We're up to German territory.
Victor asserts that California harbors more illegal aliens than any other state in the Union. A burden, he says, is reshaping its economy, politics, and social fabric.
What is your solution to that? Recently, there have been surveys of roads and infrastructure. California is either last or among the 5 worst states as far as the conditions of their freeways and general roads. How can that be when we have the highest gas taxes in the United States by far? So my question to you is, you're governor, you have this enormous tax base, you have a $9 trillion industry in Silicon Valley, and yet you will not address these existential needs that we don't have affordable power. We don't know what to do with the millions of people, 1 out of every 5 who won't or can't pay their power bill. We don't have enough money to give medical support for illegal aliens. 27% of the population of the state was not born in the United States. That's an enormous task of integration and assimilation and civic education in our schools, which we're not doing. Our school test scores are among the bottom 10 in the United States. And given all that, it's an abject disaster, because what you have done, Governor, and you didn't do it all, you inherited a lot from your predecessor, Jerry Brown, but you created a state which has the highest taxes and the worst social services. And the result of that is 3 things. Number 1, 10 to 15 million people said, if I'm going to pay the highest taxes and yet live in a state that has a high rate, poor social services, awful schools, I'm out. And they have left. And that was our traditional middle-class entrepreneurial cohort. Second, we have more illegal aliens than any other state in the union. You have welcomed them in without any plan how to assimilate, integrate, house, feed, take care of their health needs. So we have a huge number of poor people. 1 out of every 3 people on public assistance in the United States lives in California. We're up to 20% of our population lives below the poverty rate. Third, the only reason that this country, this state, is even in existence is that we have this global tech empire in Silicon Valley. But the result of it is we have a pyramidal medieval society in which we have a small billionaire class, and 1% of Californians pay about 50% of the income tax, that has utopian agendas about solar and wind power and diversity and equity. but they're not the majority of the population. They're not the minority of the They're a tiny little influential coastal elite who's become the richest group of people in history because of Silicon Valley. And then you've taken the middle class and driven them out of California. And then we have this large segment on the bottom of the pyramid that is poor. It cannot afford to pay its power bill. It has no access to health care because the system is broke, given the numbers of people who've come here from southern Mexico and other places in dire poverty. And you have no plan. Instead, we're talking about transgender athletes and men participating in women's sports. That's nothing. That is, of all the great issues in the world, that's nothing compared to what's going on in California. We are in an existential free fall, and you as governor either can't or won't do anything about it. And if this continues in another decade, this is going to be a completely medieval third world society, if it isn't already.